It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Yo, what is up? Welcome to the HVACR videos live stream. How you guys doing this evening? Hopefully you guys are doing well. I am alive. I woke up today. I haven't figured out if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but I don't know. It's like Groundhog Day. I keep waking up. You just keep waking up. You're just like, oh, okay, let's start over. Here we go. I don't know about you, but as I get older, I like to have more time to get ready. So I actually get up like 45 minutes early and I get ready and everything. And then I sit on the couch for 45 minutes drinking my coffee, just kind of getting ready for the day, kind of mentally preparing, watching the news, just kind of catch up on everything. And then because I don't really have a lot of time to pay attention to the news or anything like that while I'm at work. So that's like my little bit. I get 45 minutes of, just watching random YouTube clips or the news or whatever. Yeah, I know I'm old. I'm weird. But yeah, that's my decompressed time, I guess, or whatever. So welcome to the stream. For those that are new, my name is Chris. I'm a HVACR service technician here in Southern California. And I just make these videos on YouTube to try to share the little bit of knowledge that I have. The whole idea, I know a lot of you are normal, regular viewers, so you probably already know this, but the whole idea of the YouTube channel and the videos that I started making was literally just for my employees. That's all it was. Just, best practices, how I want them to be treating the customers, that kind of stuff. And then eventually we made them public, and then now everybody gets to view them, So it's kind of surreal still. I mean, I've been doing it quite a while. November of 2017 was when the channel was made. So it's been quite a few years, but still, it's still a little surreal that all of you guys still like to sit here and watch me ramble on these videos and stuff. But hey, here we go. You guys keep watching. I'll keep making them. So again, welcome to the stream. I have a couple things I want to talk about, but then also at the same time, there's always questions inside the chat. And as the moderator, Jason Johnson, has just put in there, if you guys have questions throw them in caps lock. It helps me to realize it's a question for me and just not a comment for the chat. Mr. Green says, what kind of coffee do I drink? I bounce back and forth. Dunkin' Donuts, pre-ground coffee from just like Sam's Club, the big orange container. I'll do that. And then there's another one that I've been drinking that my dad bought me. Shoot, I don't know the name, but yeah, just nothing too crazy. I'm not fancy or anything. I just put a little almond milk in there and then I'm good to go. This morning, though, I knew this was going to happen, had an epic fail. I used to drink regular milk in my coffee just a little bit just to cut the bitterness. And then I just noticed I wasn't feeling too good with regular milk. So I started doing almond milk. Well, this morning I grabbed my wife's soy milk and I poured soy milk in my coffee. And I was like, and I realized it. And I was like, man, I don't want to make more coffee. So I just put some almond milk on top of it. And I suffered through it. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but I will survive, I guess. So, you know, all right, let's see what we got going on in here. Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate you being a moderator. Same with you, Ike. That's really awesome. But Jason, thanks for always being in here on a regular basis and, you know, posting the like you were posting my website link. Ike, thanks for posting the Discord link. Like, it's really cool to have all these people that want to help out. So it's really neat. Kenji says he has a Hoshizaki kicking my ass with a 3-beep long freeze cycle. You hate ice machines. Yeah. So I worked on ice machines all day long today, just Manitowoc ice machines, but on Hoshizaki ice machines, 3-beep long freeze cycle. First thing you need to check is there plate separation on the evaporators? Make sure you have the right water coming into the machine. Make sure it's not iced up. Make sure you have factory OEM parts on the machine and make sure it's clean. Okay. Make sure the float's clean, the breather tubes on the float, all that stuff needs to be 100% clean all the way through, then proceed to troubleshoot. But if you're having a long freeze cycle, I'd be willing to guess it's possibly plate separation on the evaporators. That's a really common issue with the Hoshizakis right now. So let's see what else. Does it surprise me that people from all over the world watch my stuff, not even HVAC techs? Yeah, you know, there is a lot of people that watch my stuff. Chipmunk's not an HVAC tech, I don't think, right? I'm almost positive you're not an HVAC tech. But yeah, it's a trip to have people from around the world that watch these videos. It's rather surreal, to be honest with you. So what brand RTU do I sell? I'm not a specific dealer for any one brand. I really appreciate the Lennox package units. I do commercial air conditioning and refrigeration. So I appreciate the Lennox package units. They're probably my favorite. Carrier being my second favorite. And, you know, all the other brands behind that. York being at the very bottom of that list, just buried by everything else. Okay. So, I mean, but you know, if I sell a unit, I probably sold more Carriers lately than I have Lennox units, because Lennoxes are top dollar units. They're really expensive, but when you get the higher end ones, but they just work when they're working. So, and they're really easy to work on the Lennox ones. So, am I familiar with a Cascade heat pump system? No, Dale. I mean, the concept, I'm aware I'm aware of Cascade systems in general, but I don't know if I'm aware of a Cascade heat pump system. I'm intrigued by that. So let's see what else. Oh, that's really cool, Scott. Yeah, see, it's really neat that all you guys are in here saying that you don't even work in there. So that's cool. Do I work on any Nordyne package units? No, not really. I can't say that I haven't ever worked on one. I'm sure I have, but I don't really remember it. But all right. Let's see what else we got going on in here. Yeah, Jason does love the pumpkins. He's a train guy. And there's nothing wrong, you know, and see, that's the thing. For all the other brands besides York, okay, York just literally belongs at the bottom. Nothing should be above a York, right? But for all, I'm being sarcastic about the York units, right? But in all reality, most preferences, like Jason prefers train units. I can pretty much tell you that Jason works on a good majority of train units. He's had a lot of training on train units and he's very comfortable with them. I have worked on a lot of Lennox equipment, had a lot of training on Lennox equipment, Carrier equipment. I'm very familiar with both of those brands. So therefore, if I was going to sell a brand, it would probably be one of those. If Jason was responsible for selling a particular brand, he may choose to sell Train because he's really comfortable with them. And I think it's more of that. I'm not going to say that, like, you know, Train is a bad brand, York is a bad brand. I joke around, but I mean, in reality, it's about what you're comfortable working on, right? I'm not super comfortable working on Train because I haven't ponied up the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to be trained on their equipment. So I'm not as familiar with them, right? So I can't say that they're my favorite to work on, but I mean, I can usually work my way through them. I'm not working on any like crazy complicated systems. I mean, I have two trained spaceships out there that are variable speed, everything, all this fancy crap that they don't need to be. But, you know, I mean, it's just, I think, all about what you're comfortable working on. People reach out to me, homeowners, restaurant owners, and they're like, what brand equipment do I recommend? Right. And I'm not selling it to them. They're just asking me my opinion on the matter. And usually what I tell them is, whoever your HVACR contractor is, talk to him, because you don't want the restaurant owner or the homeowner deciding that they want a particular brand of equipment that their contractor is not comfortable working on, because that's where you run into problems. You know, the contractor that's servicing the equipment, in theory, should be the person installing it and should be the person that's comfortable working on it. So you always want to lean on your contractor or your technicians or whatever to ask them what brand they prefer working on, right? What parts do they stock? Who has the most available parts, you know? And that all comes into play. And that's going to be regional specific for sure. Let me see what else. All right. What's some good online free or cheap courses you can pick up as an HVAC graduate and intern? Ryan, go to HVACRschool.com. Easiest free online courses, videos, tech tips, HVACRschool.com or the HVAC School YouTube channel. But their website is HVACRschool.com. So that is a great free training resources. Lots of great information on there. Lots of contributors that contribute to that. I've done a little contributing. It's been a long time, but I've done it in the past. A lot of my friends contribute to HVAC School. It's a great, great resource for anybody in the HVACR space, whether you're a new apprentice or you're an experienced technician. You can always pick up little tips from HVACR School. Don't be afraid to give them your email address when you go to their website. You're not going to get spam from it. Okay. They're good people. They're going to send you tech tips on a daily basis. Lots of great information. So see what else we got going on in the chat. Would upsizing a condenser fan motor help with heat rejection if the coil has damage? No, not really. I mean, because there's only, for the most part, depending on what type of a condenser fan motor, if it's a condenser fan motor you're considering upsizing, that's going to be a fixed speed motor, whether it be an 850 RPM or a 1075 RPM. Not really going to make a difference upsizing it. Upsizing it's just going to give it a more, you can put more workload on the motor essentially if you upsize it, right? But having a dirty coil, I mean a damaged coil, I don't think you're really going to do much. Just make sure the coil is as clean as possible. That's all you can do, and really start to consider to replace it. So okay, do I accept PayPal? Trying to get some merch. Okay, so here's the thing. I've had a lot of people from other countries reaching out to me asking if I can get them merch. Here's the deal. It's really difficult for me to ship to other countries. I don't have the mental capacity. I'm super swamped with everything right now. So I don't have the mental capacity to start trying to do the work to figure out how to ship things to other countries. I can ship to Canada. That's about it right now. All within the United States and Canada. Now, you know, I can talk to my wife. She's the one that handles the merch, but it's rather complicated to figure out the overseas shipping stuff. It's just a pain in the butt. So what I've heard from people, and I don't know the name of the companies, but I've had at least 3 people contact me from in Europe that have said they have ordered merch from me, but they used a third-party company that specialized in buying merch from the United States. I have no idea the name of the company, okay? I wish I did, but I've had multiple people reach out to me. So apparently there is a third-party company that specializes in different countries that will get you merchandise from the United States. They handle everything, and it just comes through on my end as a normal order. If any of you guys know of those companies, please send me an email so I can start sharing that information with other people. If any of you guys find those companies, let me know again so I can share it with people, because that'll make it easier for me to get merch to other people. I currently don't have a PayPal set up for merchandise. I have a PayPal that you can donate to, but it's, you know, getting the merchandise thing is just the pain in the butt part. So all right. Too expensive for shipping, not worth it. Yeah, that's the difficult thing. I mean, it's even expensive for me to ship to Canada. Like I have a flat rate surcharge for Canadian shipping, and it's ridiculous what they charge to ship stuff up there. It's just insane. So let's see what else we got going on. If you get the fan moving air too fast, oh yeah, exactly. Like Ike's saying, if the fan's moving the air too fast, it won't have the proper heat transfer. That's 100% correct. So a local grocery store of yours has one RTU on the entire roof, and the building is 43,000 square feet, and the unit is no more than 25 tons. That is because they use the refrigeration system. So they usually have. I'm not going to go into crazy because I'm not super well versed in this, but I know that they will use I think they use some of the refrigeration system, like the package units just help, but the refrigeration system is somehow helping to cool the building too, especially if they have open cases and different things. So, but maybe someone in the chat can help out because I'm not experienced in that at all. So hello to everybody. How you doing today, John? So heat reclaim. There you go. Jason says, yeah, see, I knew it was something to do with that. So, is spring bad for cokeness? Yeah, exactly. I'm just itching. It's weird. The weather here right now, it's because, we've got this bipolar weather. It's not normal to be this cold in May. I know that it's not 100 degrees yet in May. Well, actually towards the end, we're usually starting to hit 9,500 degrees at the end of May. But right now we're still having these super cold mornings. I mean, my heat pump was running this morning, like heating my house. It's a trip. Oh, speaking of that, for all the naysayers and all the haters, when I was doing my home system install, which I'm not completely done with, but it's up and running, been running for like a year now. A lot of people gave me pushback and hate because I did press fittings. I used the Zoomlock Max fittings for my line set. And, everybody's, oh, there's going to leak. You're going to have problems. No leaks yet. Speaking of that, I came home today and I was like, man, we're getting into heat, cooling season. And it was funny because I went up to my office this morning and, I noticed that there's a problem with our air conditioner at the office. And so I got to dig into that. I haven't even figured that out yet, but it made me think. I was like, I haven't really been running the cooling at my house very much, and I haven't really tested my system out. It's been running a little bit in cooling, but nothing crazy. So I went ahead and put it into charging mode today and just let it stabilize out for 30 minutes and then check the system operation. 100% charges dead on. I was calling for 5.9 degrees of subcooling. I think I had 5.7 to 5.9. It was what it was ranging at. No problems at all. So no leaks yet. Let's see. All right. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat right now. John L says he has a Bally walk-in freezer that has a bad evaporator motor, but you can't find anyone that has one. Every supply house told him that they can't find a replacement for it. What else can you do? Depends on how old the system is. You should be able to go to a motor supply shop, or you should be able to contact Bally, and you should probably be able to find that information. Is Bally in existence anymore? I think they are. I think they're Trenton, aren't they? I don't know. But you should have a motor supply shop. What kind of a motor is it? Is it just one of those Bally like industrial style of coolers that has a what is it? A capacitor start, capacitor run motor with a big giant fan blade on it. I used to have a couple Bally evaporators. They were like industrial style ones. But you should be able to just find any motor for it. So let's see what else. Reheat will remove the humidity 100%. There you go, Brian. So the rack systems will sometimes run another coil with a blower. Yep, there you go. Let's see what else we got going on here. Reading through the chat right now. What do I think of Viper drain pan treatment? I love Refrigeration Technologies. I have a partnership with them. Great company, great people. I know John Pastorello, Mike Pastorello, father and son. Mike Pastorello runs the company now. John started the company, created all the products and everything. They're great, great people. I use a lot of their products. The pan and drain treatment is not something that I use because we don't really have the need for that in the kind of stuff that I'm working on. But I know a lot of people that swear by the pan and drain treatment. I personally have never used it, but I can vouch for it and tell you that I know if Refrigeration Technologies made it, it's a good product. So what do I think? I already answered that one. About 30 years, you believe in, called Bally, and they told him it's obsolete. You 100% can find a motor for it, dude. You might have to modify something, make a new bracket for it, but you should be able to go to a motor supply shop and find a motor for it, 100%. I have motor supply shops, like motor supply shops that actually like rewind motors and then they'll do like blower assembly rebuilds and stuff. I have two of them near me. One of them's called AAA motors. And then the other one, that one's about 45 minutes away from me. And then we have another one where it's a bunch of the guys from AAA motors. Shoot, I'm trying to think of the name of it right now. I can't think of it right now, but I'll think of it in a minute. But yeah, just find a motor rewinding shop. They should have a lot of motors in stock. You can also try your local supply house too. Just understand that you can't just hand a motor to a supply house and say, figure it out. You got to use some logic in there too, because they might hand you something that doesn't work. So you need to be able to look at it and stare, and figure it out. Don't know if I know this about these units, but you really like the Train Foundation RTU. Yeah, I haven't really worked on any of those yet. So all right, so I got a couple questions I want to answer. Yeah, the Coke nose is strong today too, by the way. My nose is dry. So had a recent video, why does our AC stop working, and had a few questions of that. So on that particular unit, it had a greasy condenser, okay? And Mr. Green says, would adding an extension for the exhaust fans help with keeping the coils from attracting so much grease? So sometimes in restaurants, the equipment isn't placed very good. Exhaust fans are closest to ACs, etc., right? And so you have grease. If we can, I have done it in the past where we've taken ACs and moved them and ran ductwork to them to kind of get them away from the grease. We've done that in the past. On a big unit, like in that video, why does our AC always stop working? It was a 15-ton package unit. I'm not going to set that on the roof, but what we would do in the past, if we have like a small 5-ton, you could just pick the unit up, go set it on pressure treated 4x4s, and then run ductwork over to it from the existing curb. But on a 15-ton package unit, that thing probably weighs what, 2,000 pounds, 1,500 pounds or something like that. You don't want that to be sitting on another place on the roof. The roof is designed and engineered for something like that. So we can't really move the AC. Next question is, can we put an extension on the exhaust fans? You certainly could, but everything you do is going to make it harder and harder to work on something. If we put an extension on an exhaust fan, it's going to push that grease up higher. You're going to have to take that extension off to be able to work on it and change the motors and stuff. It's kind of like a gamble there. Like, do you just clean the condenser every once in a while, or do you put an extension that's going to make it almost impossible for the grease cleaners to clean the exhaust fan and for anybody to work on the exhaust fan? That makes a struggle for sure. What does the blue coil coating do? Is it a factory option? Spencer asked that one. Actually, a bunch of people asked that question. So the condenser coil is covered in like a blue coil coating. That coil coating is a corrosion. It basically reduces corrosion. Okay. So it's like an epoxy that's on there. It's like there's a special process that they do to coat those coils. And then you basically get a little bit more life out of them. The coil coatings do not make them impenetrable to salt or anything like that, but they just help to slow it down, gives them a running chance where maybe you'll get 5 to 10 years out of that equipment instead of 2 to 4, Now that particular unit actually doesn't need a coil coating. It's nowhere near the coast, doesn't need it. Don't know why they did it. Is it a factory option? On those particular units, no. It's a third-party company. Sometimes the factories have agreements with the third-party companies. Some factories, like Heatcraft Refrigeration, they do coil coating on their refrigeration coils. So it just depends. You can order it. Some have it, some don't. On that particular Lennox unit that you saw the blue coating, that was a third-party coating. Basically, they intercept the unit before it goes to the customer. They take it to their factories, and they'll do the coating process, and then the unit will get delivered to the restaurant for install. That's how it works on some of them. It just depends on each manufacturer. You get into the higher end manufacturers and they'll do the coil coatings themselves, Let's see what else we got going on in the chat right now. Reading through here. Thoughts on the new Ecoblue Xvan blower, HVAC with Brandon. Installed a bunch of units, worked on a bunch of units with the Ecoblue motors. They're great, but here's the problem. Our ductwork is all messed up, always, okay? Every restaurant out there that has ductwork, whether it be rigid metal duct or whether it be flex duct, it's all undersized, okay? I'd go out on a limb and say 99.9% of the duct jobs out there on commercial equipment is all undersized, the stuff that I'm working on, okay? I would also go out on a limb and say 99.99999% of all residential installs have improperly sized ductwork too. So at a restaurant, you have a package unit that needs to be replaced. You pull the old package unit, you put a new one in, and it has that Xvan Ecoblue ECM motor in it. Well, here's the problem. The old one was a blower motor and a wheel. The new one is an axial fan motor. Those axial fan motors can't handle the high static like the old blower wheels could. And so you start to run into problems. So what do I think about the Ecoblue Xvan motors? I think they're fine as long as the ductwork's sized right. If it's not, then you need to make sure you're setting it up, protecting the motor. Okay. So when you're doing the startup on those Xvan motors, you have to, or Ecoblue motors, you have to put static pressure probes to get total external static on the unit, and you have to run it. And then you have to set the airspeed using total external static and the pressure, or in the CFM charts, right? But then you also, it's not just setting the CFMs, because you have to pay attention to the total external static to make sure you're not overloading that motor. So sometimes, actually majority of the time, I end up having to set lower than normal blower speeds on there because it's overloading the motor and we don't want to burn up the motor. So you got to make sure you're setting those things appropriately and considering the total external static, not just looking at the charts and saying, boom, 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 set it at D and move on. You need to check the motors to make sure they're not being overloaded. So reading through here right now. How do I discipline employees if they have multiple callbacks in a week? It's really about discussing. I mean, there's not like a cookie cutter approach to talking to an employee. You just really need to talk to them, okay? And bring up the shortcomings, try to figure out why. This is why I think it's so important. I mentioned this on the overtime show. If you guys don't know, I do another show with my friends on Friday evenings called the HVAC Overtime Show. And I was discussing on there how my personal preference is that I want to know my employees' weaknesses so that way I can help them to grow. And I also know what calls to send them on. If employees are calling other people for help and not calling me, then I don't know where we can improve. So it's very important for you to make sure you're reaching out to your management, your leadership, the hierarchy of your company, to let them know your shortcomings and be honest with them. Hey, I'm really struggling with this type of equipment. So that way, maybe, they'll decide to, hey, send you for some training or give you some extra education on that equipment, right? So it's so important to make sure that you are talking with your management, talking with the owners, talking with the service managers, whoever it may be, and not just calling random people for help, because your management needs to know where you need help at. So that's part of the thing. If you have an employee that's getting a lot of callbacks, if I don't know that guy's calling every other person in the world to get help and he's not letting me know, then I start to think there's really something wrong, because, if I don't know that he's struggling, then, so it's communication's the biggest thing. It's just communicate with everybody. All right, let's see. What do I think about running HVAC equipment while the building is under construction? Painters say they need the heat for the paint to cure and stuff. Yeah, that is a discussion for the building occupants. I mean, the people that are going to be living in the building, the general contractor, whoever you're working for. Because, yeah, I understand the painters need the temperatures high inside the building. In a perfect world, I would say space heaters are a better option to bring up temperatures so that way they can paint things. Because if you're running equipment, where's your filters at? Are your filters at the package unit, or are they at the ductwork? Or at the return grills and stuff? Because if they're just at the return grills, or if they're at the package units, then all that dust and all that crap is getting in the ductwork and contaminating the ductwork. So that way, when the new tenant moves in, then they're going to start complaining to you about smells and all kinds of things. So running equipment under construction is very difficult, and you need to understand the pain points and also the ramifications of doing so. If you're running it while they're doing drywall work and stuff like that, your ductworks are going to be destroyed from all the drywall dust and everything. It's just going to be caked inside of there, unless you have filters way down at the return grills. I don't know, but there's a lot of things to weigh out when you're doing that kind of work. What type of equipment do I hate working on the most? Not brands, but types. Reach in freezers, reach in coolers, low boys, ice machines. I mean, the most inconvenient to work on low boy drawer units, because they're usually in the middle of the cook's line. It's difficult to work on them in the middle of a shift. It's usually an early morning thing. We're pretty upfront with our customers when they call us and say, hey, our low boy unit's down, and it's 3:00 in the afternoon, and they say, we need you now. I'll call them and be like, no, we'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Make sure you clean out the box and empty it out of all the food so that when we come in the morning, we can hit the ground running. If they're insistent, what I'll do is I'll just show up on the job site, get your hoses and get everything. And you're charging them for all this time. and get there and say, hey, you know what? These boxes are filthy inside. There's food everywhere. There's water in the bottom of the box. I need to pull out all the drawers, all the food, and I need to hose everything out, squeegee it out before I can work on it. Usually when you're standing there with the hose at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon and they're in the middle of a dinner rush, they'll say, yeah, let's come tomorrow morning. Okay, cool. You know, and then I'll charge them for my time that day and then come back out the next morning and charge them for my time again. But usually they learn their lesson and listen to me when I say that's not a thing for in the middle of a shift, you know? So if I had to say the most inconvenient things to work on are low boy units or even bar units. Bar units, when they're loaded down with glasses and beer bottles and stuff, and then they're like, we need you here now, you know, and it's like a reach-in cooler. And you're sitting in the bar with like a full bar of people staring at you as you're trying to work on things. You know, they don't want to take out the food. Then I'm just like, guys, this is a morning thing, you know? And we stopped getting into most of that drama and started telling them like this, we need to come out in the morning for that stuff. You guys just need to wait, you know? All right, let's see what else we got going on in the chat. Okay, I'm reading through, see what I'm missing. All right, a couple more things I need to cover. Let me cross some things off. How's the battery life on the wireless probes and clamps, Mr. Green asked? It really depends on the batteries that you're using. I use name brand batteries, Energizer, Duracell, whatever it may be, and I tend to find better luck with those. They last longer. They work better in the cold. You got to pay attention to that kind of stuff. If you're buying the really, really cheap batteries, they're not going to do good when it's really cold outside. You know, the range of the Bluetooth and stuff isn't as good. So I personally just use high quality batteries and I expense that stuff to the customer. It's in my hourly rates. It's in my materials costs, you know, so I don't mind using good batteries and just keeping up on them with my probes because they help me to diagnose and help me to fix customers' equipment. So how big is the Fieldpiece core puller? How much bigger than the Appion? I don't have them sitting on my desk right now, but I'll maybe next live stream. Someone send me an email, and on my next live stream, I'll bring him into my office and I'll show you guys the differences. But Adrian, Reliable HVACR on YouTube, Adrian Garcia, he has a video where he's showing the differences between, it's like a short, I think, or something, and he shows the differences between the Appion and the new Fieldpiece one. The one with the sight glass, I'm going to tell you, is much bigger, right? It's probably, if I had to guess, an inch longer than the Appion one. You can get the Fieldpiece one without the sight glass, and it's going to be much smaller. So it's just some variables you got to consider. Let's see what else we got going on there. Reading through here. Have I had any issues with the probes disconnecting after a few minutes? Usually, no, not really. The probes disconnecting usually has to do with some sort of interference. I have it every once in a blue moon on certain restaurants. Usually has something to do with their Wi-Fi signal or some of their dishes they have on the roof. I don't know what it is, but for the most part, we have pretty good range on most of the Fieldpiece probes that I use. So, what apps am I using to read pressures on my iPad? Justin is asking that. The app that I use is called Measure Quick. Measure Quick is a software. It's free to download. There's some paid features and there's some free features. But I use Measure Quick, not so much for the troubleshooting, but just because it consolidates all my data for me on one screen, 2 screens I can scroll between, and it helps me to troubleshoot better. You can also use other apps like the Testo app, the Fieldpiece app, whatever you like, it all works out. So, let's see. Mike B says the new VCR from Fieldpiece don't look like they will fit in the new Heatcraft condensers. Good question. I haven't used it on a Heatcraft condenser. I've only had the Fieldpiece vacuum core removal tool for like 3 weeks now. So, haven't had a lot of uses with it yet. So, would I ever expand to heavier refrigeration customers? SuperTech, I don't know, man. It is difficult enough to give the quality of service that I really want to give to my existing customers that are just light commercials. So getting into the heavier industrial stuff is scary for me because I like the ability to be able to fix the problems if we ever run into callbacks and issues. Being that I'm not experienced in the heavier commercial stuff, I would have to hire people. That is difficult for me to not be able to know that I can go help if there's a situation that happened. If I'm working on the heavy industrial, I don't have the experience to know. So that's a struggle that I have. And that's my own inner struggles. You know, that's why my company doesn't have 75 technicians and, you know, doesn't cover all of California, is just because I like it to be small to where, you know, we can have that small family feel with the customers. The customers call me direct. They want to know what happened. I can usually answer for all my technicians because they're all reporting back to me. So when the customers call me and say, "Hey, what happened at this job site today?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, so and so was there, and you know, this is what was going on," and I can repeat it, you know, because they've all checked in with me and let me know. So the bigger I get, the harder it is to maintain that level of communication and that relationship with the customers. Um, would turning on the heater before turning on the AC help to create a false load during a low load in the building? Mr. Green, you would have to turn on the heat for so long in that building, bring the temperature and all of the walls and the tables and the chairs and everything so high in temperature for it to even to last for a little bit. Because you turn on the heater, you bring up the room temperature to 76 degrees, 78 degrees, right? You could do that, but you know, everything in that room is still absorbing that heat. So when you turn off the heat and you turn on the air conditioner, it's going to bring that room right back down to the 68, 69 degree building temperature in no time, because you haven't given it enough time to, you know, absorb the heat. And that creates a problem. So when you have low load conditions, it's just things you have to take into account. Do I still have a lot of hats? Oh yeah, I still got lots and lots of hats. So, um, it's just way easier to be the most knowledgeable tech for your company. Okay, so not to sound like a dick, but is it just way easier to be the most knowledgeable tech for your company? No, I mean, I don't know what you're really asking me there. Like, you know, I am how do I explain this? I mean, each one of my technicians has their own strengths and weaknesses, right? So some of them might be more well versed. Like for instance, one of my techs, Will, he's much more well versed with the Isomatics new ice machines. He's been running most of the Isomatic calls. I haven't been running the Isomatic calls. I don't doubt that I couldn't figure it out if I got my hands on it, but Will's kind of my go-to guy for the Isomatic ones because he's been doing a lot of work on those. So I kind of let him do his thing. And, you know, he can spout stuff off the top of his head about the operation and the functions and the sequence and everything more so than I can, right? I know if I got in there and called tech support and stared at the machine long enough, I could figure it out, but he's more well versed in it. So I just let him do his thing. So reading through here. Do I find leaks using a vacuum pump? Do I find, I mean, I don't know if that's a question or a statement really, but you can. It's not the most practical way to find leaks because you're not pinpointing the leaks unless you had a what's the the leak detectors that you can hear. What are those called? I can't think of what they're called right now, but finding leaks with a vacuum pump, I mean, realistically, you're just going to see it fail a decay test for the most part, and then you're going to be like, okay, I need to pressurize the system to find the leak. So it's not very practical to find leaks with a vacuum pump. That's what I would say. So have I ever used the Appion Megaflow hoses? Super Tech. Yeah, I have them. They're just too rigid. I have a whole suitcase full of a bunch of the Appion. I had like the Appion manifold, and I have the Megaflow hoses and all the different size hoses and everything. I have a whole freaking setup of that stuff. I just don't use it anymore because I've graduated into the True Blue hoses because they're much more flexible and easier to work with. So reading through here. What recovery machine do I prefer? Right now, I really like the Fieldpiece MR45 recovery machine. Great little recovery machine, and it's done me good for at least, what, 4 or 5 years? Probably 4 years. I don't know how long it's been out, but I've had it for a long time. So I did a van tour video, I don't know, a month or two ago, maybe 3 months ago. I don't know. Charlie asks, how did I get everything so straight in my van? That's the magic of a camera. Everything is not perfect and straight in that van. It just looks like it is. But for the most part, what I did was I parked the van on the street, put a level in the van, found that it was pretty darn level, and then used the level to set everything up as I was installing it. But it's in no means 100% level as everything in that van. It's just, you know, me just letting my OCD kick in and try to make things look as good as they can. So, let's see. Joe Shearer, great point. He says you're only testing with 14.7 PSI with a vacuum testing. Yeah, so it's just not very practical. I'm sure that you could do it. I'm sure someone out there will tell me that I'm wrong and that you can, but it's just not practical to me, especially on the systems we work in with the tools that we have. we can put 100 psi of nitrogen in there using with a refrigerant trace gas in there, use an electronic leak detector. You could do so many different things. And trying to find leaks with a vacuum, I just feel like you're going to be there forever. I'm sure there's some reason that you have to, who knows. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat. Cool. Is Linux L series still a thing? On the commercial package units, they have graduated from the L series units. Right now we are on, what's the new control strategy? It's Linux. I don't know what they call the units, but it has core. Linux core controller is their new controller in their units. And it's a Bluetooth enabled controller that you set everything up with your phone. I have a video on it. If you Google search or put on YouTube Linux core controller, you'll come up with my video. You'll come up with Linux videos too, but my video will be right at the top and you'll see me doing the install on it. So there you go. Was it really? Okay, so I had a video where the equipment was left off on the roof, and then I also worked on their kitchen AC. So David had asked me in that video, several people asked me, but David was the one that I have the question right here. If I was just concerned about the office being too hot, and I said the ductwork in the whole building's messed up and they need a complete reduct for the kitchen, why don't I just add a mini split to the office to solve their problems? Number one, there's not enough room in that office. They have so much equipment crammed inside there. I would love to show you guys the office, but I can't because there's too many identifying logos and stuff like that for the restaurant chain. And I realize that some of you guys that watch my videos can guess the names of the restaurants because you may have worked in them, you recognize them, but please don't share that information in the comments or anywhere. I try to keep the restaurant names out of my videos to protect the restaurants. Okay. It's really difficult to keep all the identifying logos out of the videos. I really do have to work at it. But the general public doesn't understand what's dirty and what's not dirty. And, I try to keep the restaurant names out of it. So please stop trying to guess. And in fact, those are one of the only comments I ever delete is when people guess restaurant names right or wrong. I just delete them. They get an instant delete, whether it's right or wrong. So reading through the chat. What do I got going on here? Okay, cool. Why not use a GoPro when I'm recording my videos? I've addressed this a million times, but I'm going to address something else. And this goes hand in hand with me trying to do a really good job of not identifying the restaurants. When I am recording my videos, I record on a phone. Now, this is my iPhone. I don't use my iPhone for recording. I actually use an Android phone, but I use an iPhone for my personal phone and everything. And when I'm recording, I am looking at the screen. Right? I'm looking at the video. I can see what I'm recording, and I'm very careful about that. When you have a GoPro, one of the downfalls is that it's got a fisheye lens. You can change the fisheye, but I get it. It has a fisheye lens, right? And it's recording everything. And it's more editing, okay? There's oftentimes when I'm recording things, I'll record a clip, and then I'll be like, oh, man, there was a logo in that. So I'll just delete that clip and then record again. If I'm on a GoPro, that's just more editing, right? The next thing is with a GoPro, I get motion sickness. So as I'm walking around, I have to watch that stuff on my screen, and it's really difficult. And I get nauseous trying to edit that footage. So it's just difficult for me. I use a GoPro every once in a blue moon. The other problem with GoPros is the footage is not reliable. I can't tell you, I really don't use GoPros very often, but there's been a bunch of times, the very few times I have used them, where I've had bad footage or a clip didn't get recorded. There's missing clips. There's corrupted files. I don't cross my fingers. Don't think I've ever had a corrupted file recording on my phones. It's only been on GoPros. It's just been a headache. And I buy top high-end memory cards, fast write speeds, everything. And I've just had so many problems with the GoPro footage. So that's just my 2 cents on that matter. Backpacks. I made a YouTube short where I was talking about a time that I was climbing a ladder and I went to go reach the top rung and I missed the top rung and I fell off the ladder because I had torches in my hand and I was one-handing it, right? One-handing it, climbing up the ladder. I missed the top rung. I fell back, landed on a safety cage. I was super fortunate I didn't land on the ground because I would have gotten seriously hurt. And I talked about now I use a backpack. So I can put the backpack on, use 2 hands to climb the ladder, then rope everything else I need up on the roof whenever possible. A lot of people say that their companies don't allow for backpacks, and that's fine. If they don't, then use a closed top bag or whatever it may be. The whole point of the clip was take your time. Stop being in such a rush. You want to go home to your family, right? So, do I like a backpack? Do I like a closed top bag? Do I like a bucket? I prefer a backpack. I like them. I use the Vito Wheeler bag because I roll that thing around the restaurants all day long. And then every once in a while, I put the backpack straps on, climb on the roof, then roll it around the roof, right? I'm lazy and I'm getting old. I don't want to have to carry stuff around all the time. Do I get my Linux parts from Linux Parts Plus? Yeah. If I'm buying parts for equipment, if I need carrier parts, I go to my carrier distributor, Sigler. If I need Linux parts, Linux Train parts, I go to Train. York parts, I go to US Air Conditioning distributors. It just go to each distributor for the parts. You can get parts from like aftermarket distributors and third parties, like Parts Town sells a lot of parts, but you got to wait for them, right? I can go to my local distributors and just pick them up. So I don't want to have to wait for anything. Reading through here. Do I ever use a pulley to haul stuff up on the roof? Super Tech. I have. I don't do very many jobs, but I have. I have a video out there where I had to lift a 7.5 ton compressor on the roof, and it was up like a, I don't know, 25, 30 foot roof access. It was a really tall one. And yeah, I set up a gantry setup with a pulley and, you know, multiple pulleys to reduce the weight load or whatever, and, you know, lifted all the equipment up on the roof that way. I've done it, you know. Yeah, it's not something that I do that often because I don't work on big giant stuff very much. So what else we got going on here? All right, let's see. What makes me decide to put gauges on a unit? Okay, so that's a great question. When I walk up to a unit and you know, whether it be a refrigeration unit or an air conditioning unit, I'm going to look at system vitals. And part of my system vitals is going to be just listening and using my senses, right? Listening to the customer, listening to the equipment, looking at the equipment, and just evaluating things. So I had a video where a package unit was turned off on the roof. I checked for shorts to ground to make sure someone didn't turn it off for a certain reason. I turned the equipment on, watched it operate, checked the temperature differential from the supply air to the return air, and it had a pretty good temperature differential. I didn't see any reason to have to put service gauges on that unit. But why not? Well, just because I evaluated it. I looked at it. It had perfectly good, clean filters. So I think that was part of the decision making to turning the unit back on was I think that the filter changers just left the unit off, right? But you know, I just kind of look at everything. And sometimes I'll work on a refrigeration system and we'll go up there and, you know, I may decide that I don't need to put on service gauges, right? And it just, every single job is going to be different. And I use my judgment when I walk up to it. In the chat, you know, I'm going to ask you guys in the chat right now, you know, do you guys ever make judgment calls on whether or not you need to gauge up on certain things? You know, or do you guys gauge up on every single piece of equipment every single time? I'll wait for the chat to answer. Let's see what they have to say. So, any recommendations on pipe thermometers that isn't Bluetooth clamps? Cooper Atkins makes some really, really good, high quality thermocouple tools and pipe clamp tools. I like those. Those would be my preference if I was going old school. I still have a Fluke 52. That's a dual temp display meter. I still will use that every once in a while too. All the time, says Brian Sanders. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat. Judgment Call says Joe Fiducioso. Hopefully I'm not butchering your name again. HVAC with Brandon says, this is going to sound stupid, but is there a unit strong enough to pull you into them? You've been told there is. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure if you work on some of the big industrial stuff, you know, you don't want to be opening blower doors. You may not even be able to open blower doors. You know, you don't want to be standing next to, you know, a giant blower assembly on a giant, you know, boxcar unit, you know, to where I don't know if it would suck you in, but I'm sure that the suction that those units create is rather large. So yeah, there's certain safety things you want to worry about for sure. There you go. Super Tech says sometimes you don't got to gauge up if you know your suction saturation temp. So yeah, if you're working on a system that has a full like an E3 control system or E2 control system, and you can see all the temperatures and everything, you may not need to gauge up on things, you know. Super Tech says sometimes he sets superheat by discharge air, but he does supermarkets. That's 100%. Brian Sanders says least invasive is the way. That means he doesn't put his service gauges on everything. He makes a judgment call. You know, when you're working on the smaller stuff like I work on, you know, I might be working on a reach-in cooler that has 5 ounces of R290. I might be working on a walk-in cooler that has 48 pounds of refrigerant, right? But that's like the biggest stuff I work on. So, you know, every time you put your gauges on something, that's going to be a little bit of refrigerant that gets lost, just a little bit, but it over time that adds up. So if you can do your service work and still get the equipment fixed to 100% operation without having to put service gauges on it, then I say go for it. But you also need to be able to say this, 100% is working properly. And I don't see a need to have to put service gauges, because the customer's not going to understand if you said, well, I didn't want to put my gauges on it because I was trying to preserve your refrigerant. Well, now they're paying you to come back out again. So then that becomes a problem. So you got to kind of make those judgment calls and know what you're doing there. Isaiah asked me, how in the heck did I get hot water on the roof in one of my videos? It just depends on the customer, but I work in restaurants. So the restaurants always have hot water available. It may or may not be easy access to the roof. I might have to run hoses across the building or something like that to get it up there. But for the most part, I can usually get hot water onto my restaurant roofs one way or another. May have to use 3 hoses or something. Got to be very, very careful though, running hot water through the inside of the building, because water hoses tend to come loose as they get warm and move around and stuff. Customers kick them and they'll just start spraying water everywhere. And if it's burning hot water from the commercial water heater, that can be a problem. So you got to be very careful about that. Man, the Coke nose is driving me nuts today. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat. You can gauge how much liquid on a RTU based on subcooling. Yeah, you can. Yes, you can. 100%. Measure Quick has non-invasive mode. That is correct. Let's see. Today you replaced a single-phase non-reversible condenser fan motor and landed the cap wires. The motor straight up ran backwards. Switched the wires on the cap and it corrected the rotation. You've never had that before on a train unit. I have heard about that before, but I've never personally seen it. But yes, I have heard about that. So, what else do we got going on here? This is a question I was looking forward to. What do I mean? I said in a video recently that I had to do an evacuation on a pumped down system. Okay. So let's talk about a pumped down system. You have a refrigeration circuit. Okay. And in that circuit, you have a liquid line receiver. This is a very small liquid line receiver with a dip tube running down. This is the outlet of the receiver. This is the inlet of the receiver. You have refrigerant coming into here, right? And we have a dip tube going to the bottom because you're going to have a vapor refrigerant mixture inside this receiver tank. So you have a dip tube coming to the bottom, and then as the refrigerant exits, it pulls it from the bottom so that we can ensure that you get liquid from the bottom and you're feeding liquid down to your expansion valves. When you do a pump down, you shut off the flow to this right here. It just stops flowing, but the refrigerant keeps pumping into here, and it's just backing up in the condenser and the receiver until it gets, and it should be sized correctly to store the whole refrigerant charge, right? And, but when you do that, there's a lot of valves in the system that are not 100% leak free. What do I mean by that? Okay, this is a suction service valve, but it serves the same purpose. Okay, this is a rotolock valve, and you can see this little plunger inside of here that goes up and down, and that is a metal plunger with no gaskets, no Teflon O-rings in there or anything, and it either goes up or down and seals off the refrigerant flow. But that's literally just a metal surface that's machined to stop the refrigerant flow. It is not 100% leak free, okay? Nor is this liquid line solenoid valve. Liquid line solenoid valves every once in a while can still leak by. Something can get stuck in this liquid line solenoid valve. The valves in the compressor are not 100% leak free. So when you have a system pumped down, on a refrigeration system, you can pump down the circuit, you can store all the refrigerant in the condenser and the receiver, and then your low side doesn't have any refrigerant in it. You can open it to atmosphere, you can make low side system repairs, right? So anything after the receiver on the liquid line, anything, before the compressor on the suction line, you can make repairs on. You can change evaporators, TXVs, all that good stuff. But when you are evacuating a pump down system, you have to keep it in your head, for the most part, unless it's a brand new system. If it's an old system, it's going to be really difficult to pull that all the way down to 200 microns with a perfect decay test. It's just not very practical in the type of stuff that I'm dealing with. So when I have pump down systems, you have to have an understanding in your head. You want to do the best job you can to evacuate that system, get any non-condensables and moisture out, but then you also have to understand that you're not going to have a perfect decay test for the most part on pump down systems, okay? Because everything leaks inside of a system. So it's not leaking to atmosphere, but it's leaking internally through all the valves, check valves, ball valves, all that stuff. The compressor, it's not going to be completely leak free, okay? So that's what I mean by on a pump down system, you're not going to see a perfect evacuation. You need to try your best, but you're not always going to see a perfect evacuation. So, I just happen to have the section components on my desk. Yes, Chipmunk, I was prepared for that one. So that's not a question in the chat. That's on my list of things to talk about. So let me see. Reading through the chat right now. Oh, Super Tech, thank you very much for that super chat, man. I really do appreciate you. How long did it take me to get good? Brett Lafleur? I mean, it's questionable whether or not I'm good. It took me a lot of mistakes, and I learned from a lot of my mistakes, and I, became the person that I am based off of my mistakes and learning from those. The whole, one of the things on my channel is I like to share my mistakes in hopes that maybe you guys can learn from my mistakes and maybe not make them yourself. There's some mistakes that I made in my career that the customers would not forgive these days. Back 20 years ago, they were like, yeah, whatever, make it right. We'll be good with it. But nowadays, customers are very unforgiving and they'll fire companies over some of the silliest mistakes. So got to keep your head on a swivel and always make sure you're paying attention and trying your best. So, reading through in here right now, more footage of me cleaning. Okay. Gordon asked inside the chat earlier in the beginning of the stream. He asked me, have I ever used any of the sealants? Okay. He mentioned a specific brand. I think he said Clip Light is a company that makes a sealant, right? I don't know who they're owned by, but they sell a bunch of stuff. All right. Screw this. I don't care. That same company at one point in time had a can of some sort of something that you would put in a system, and it was meant for mini splits, and you didn't have to do an evacuation. You put that in there and it would dry a system out, and then you were, in air quotes, supposed to be able to just open up the valves and let it go. Okay. That's baloney. We all know that stuff doesn't work. Okay. If a company's selling something like that, something that cleans a system and dries it in a can, they're dumb. Okay. And the other products I have no faith in that they're selling, right? So I got nothing to say about a company that's going to sell something that tells you that you can put it in a system and not pull an evacuation. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And I don't believe in any more of their products just based off of that one product that they were trying to push. Okay. Now let's talk about sealants. Copeland Compressors doesn't approve any sealants. Bottom line. Okay. Show me the documentation where Copeland approves us using whatever sealant that you put in there that says it's going to fix all the leaks and it's going to whatever, right? Show me the documentation that says Copeland approves it, right? On insert name of whatever manufacturer that sells those stupid sealants, on the packaging, it says OEM approved. What OEM? What manufacturer approved that? And are they a compressor manufacturer, or are they saying that, the manufacturer of this refrigerant locking cap approves it? Because people make a play on words all the time that say OEM approved or manufacturer approved. Which manufacturer? And people have to spend a lot of money to get certain compressor manufacturers such as Copeland or other ones to approve certain products. For the most part, I try not to put any additives in systems. I used to, okay. For the first part of my career, I used, acid neutralizers and all those different things. And to each their own. If someone uses that stuff, so be it. I just choose not to. Okay. But I don't use that stuff anymore. Refrigerant, oil, I'll sweep systems with nitrogen, and that's about all that I'm putting in a system. So, let's see what else we got going on here. You meant putting a sealing cassette mini split into the kitchen and replace it if it breaks due to extreme grease. Those are fairly cheap. Nothing is fairly cheap in California, and putting in a sealing cassette mini split in a kitchen, it literally wouldn't last a single summer with the amount of grease that they have in those kitchens. Mini splits and sealing cassette units do not have good filtration whatsoever. The little screens they put on there, they have humidity issues. They get completely caked up with, even in a non-greasy kitchen, they would get just destroyed with mold and bacteria buildup. And most of the customers don't want to have to deal with that kind of stuff. They'd still have to pull electrical power to it. We'd still have to run drain lines through pumps. And my customers typically don't want any of that stuff. We're just using package units for the most part on the roof. So, what's the next tattoo? I don't have any tattoos. Gosh darn it, my nose. I don't know why it's bothering me right now. I don't have any tattoos. Nothing against them. My wife has tattoos. She's been asking me to get one. I just can't make up my mind. So I have no idea. Saw an OEM approved solderless paste. You were laughing when you talked to the sales counterperson. Yeah, ask them what OEM. And shame on the supply houses for selling that crap too. It's just stupid. What OEM approved a solderless paste, right? But in all reality, what OEMs even care? I mean, for the most part, as long as it's not getting in the system, why would a compressor manufacturer care if you used a solderless paste? As long as it's not getting in the system, doesn't matter to them. You're just joining the lines together. So, what else we got going on in here? Okay, there we go. I got through my list of questions. Let's see what I'm missing in here. Okay, not much. How bad does it get when a VFD explodes? I mean, it's usually a loud, just boom, just usually that. And it's an arc flash is what you're going to hear. But usually it's in an enclosure or something. So you just hear boom and then see smoke rolling out. I mean, I've had a VFD blow up where I've had the covers off, and I mean, depending on how big it is and what the voltage going to it, it can be a big boom. Sounds like a shotgun blast sometimes. Just depends on the size of it and what actually happens. So, let's see what else we got going on in the chat. If leak sealants works, you would think that manufacturers would use it to lower their warranty claims. 100%, Joe Shearer, 100%. If leak sealers were truly that great, manufacturers would be putting them in from the factory and calling it a day. Now, who knows? Maybe in the future they'll come up with some additive that works amazingly well, but I'm very skeptical of a lot of those, and I just don't trust them. I know that refrigerant and oil works perfect. So I have used a leak sealer before. I didn't want to. It was at the customer's request. I put it in on their system and it didn't work. I don't know what brand it was, but I'm just not a fan. Just not a fan of them. So just don't see the return on investment on it. Do my Fieldpiece psychrometers work well in walk-ins or in low temp situations? Yours seem to work well with regular AC temps, but trying to get them to use for refrigeration doesn't work as well. Andrew, it depends on the batteries that you're using inside of them. Use high quality batteries and make sure that you have good range. And it just depends on the walk-in box. I mean, if you're going through 3 layers of metal and all this different stuff, yeah, it's going to be harder and harder to connect. But I've had pretty good luck for the most part. Just move around and get your temperatures, just get yourself in range. And yeah, I've had pretty good luck working in walk-in freezers, but you don't want to leave them in a walk-in freezer for 2 hours. Yeah. When it's the probes and the batteries start getting that cold, they're going to stop working. But I mean, if you're just checking superheat, you put it in a box and it's in there for 20, 30 minutes. I've had good experience with it. So Copeland or LG compressors, my opinion. I mean, Copeland's a good compressor brand. LGs, I mean, they work, but when they don't work bad. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the LG stuff, but I mean, I can't say that they're complete trash because I see equipment out there with LG compressors that have ran for years and they work just fine. I just think Copeland's probably can take a little more abuse than like an LG, in my opinion. So, R11 flush. Yeah, I don't really use this stuff anymore. I have in my past, but I don't anymore. So, reading through here. I do a lot of construction work? No, not very much at all. I used to in the past. I used to do some new construction startups of restaurants and stuff, installing walk-in coolers and freezers and ice machines for new installs. But I just got burned way too many times, and we just kind of stick with service work. So we don't really do any new construction anymore. Best leak detector is the Stratus, but you do supermarkets. So I carry 2 leak detectors in my van. I have the Fieldpiece DR82 and I have the Infocon Stratus. I actually just got the hydrocarbon sensor for the Infocon Stratus. Boy, was that expensive. Good gosh. But I haven't used it yet, but I have the sensor so I can swap it over and start using that for working on R290 systems too. So I don't install walk-in boxes themselves. I just do the equipment installs, SuperTech. So anyone know how to set SF102 temperature controller? No, I don't, my friend. I do not. All right. Well, it is time for me to wrap this up because I swear I'm going to go cut my nose off. It itches so bad right now. I really do appreciate you guys. Thank you so very much for coming in here. I am going to queue up the outro music and I'll be in here with the dogs in just a few minutes. Remember to check out the HVAC overtime this Friday evening, 6:05 p.m. Pacific time. Hopefully everybody will be there and should be a good conversation. If I missed any comments or questions, feel free to shoot me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com and I'll try to get back to you if I can. Again, I really, really appreciate you and we will catch you on the next one.